John Humberd, Tennessee Farmer, Super 701. He answers to any one of those names, but most easily identified by his big tires, red airplane, and aviation addiction. John, by trade, is a multi-generational farmer in Cleveland, Tennessee, working the field for crops and tending to cattle. As a farmer, he's very familiar with fabrication, fixing equipment on the farm, which has led the way to building his own airplane and now multiple airplanes.
Virtually no suspension either.
Nope, really not. John has competed in nearly all the STOL competitions he could fly to over the years, but lately has been literally taking care of business back home on the farm. Many have asked, where has John and his red Super 701 gone off to? Well, he's right here farming in Tennessee. All right, look up at the camera there. John, how you been? What? So out here at John Humberd's place, many of you over the past couple months, even to a year now, have been asking, where is John? What has John been up to? Well, I found him right where I left him.
Right here on the farm, right?
Still working on airplanes. So we're gonna do a shop tour and an update with John right now. So what have you been up to this past year or so? What have you been busy? We haven't seen you at a few of the shows. I know life gets in the busy of our big dreams here, but what's going on?
Life does get busy. The last several years have been kind of crazy for me. The personal flying, I mean, farming, just everything. So farm has, now that I'm back in Tennessee full-time, I'm basically full-time on the farm and doing my other little bit of stuff. I do some consulting work for local farmers for agronomy and a little bit of consult work for folks building airplanes and that kind of stuff, lots of times through FaceTime or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, several years ago I went through a divorce, and that put a change on a little bit of things personally, and I'm learning to, I guess, be single and figure all that out too. So
for those of us out there that haven't met you before, let's kind of reintroduce what you've been working on. You built a Zenith in the past, and now your future is a much bigger platform. Why don't you explain what that bigger platform is?
It is. So I built the Super 701, finished it back in 2018, and of course it kind of grew to some fame with the short takeoff landing type stuff and just flying with the STOL Bandits and all that. We've had so much fun with it, and that kind of led into, I wanted more capacity, more range. I want to be able to carry luggage and tents and all that kind of stuff. I just want more. You know, it's just one of those things we get a taste of it, and dang, I want more. So I turned around and I'm building the 750 SD, 750 Super Duty, which is a Zenith. It's essentially their 3-seat model, but it's really a 2-seat with a rear jump seat. And in the start, this thing was going to be just a quick build. I'm just going to build it by the books and use the components you can get through Zenith, and we'll crank it out, and I'll be flying it in a year. And 3 years later, I'm in one of the biggest customizations I've ever done. So
that is awesome. Well, let's talk about the airframe first, and then we'll jump over to the power plane, okay? All right, so let's get into some of the airframe modifications to make this the John Humberd Special, or the Extreme, as we got over there.
Yeah, on the backboard, yep. And the whole Tennessee Flying Farmer, I've kind of changed my, of course, you can still find me under Super 701 with you too, but I'm kind of leaning that toward the Tennessee Flying Farmer just because I've got the Super Duty in the works, I've got the Super 701, I've got the little 701 over there that'll be a single seat after I get this Super Duty in the air. So I'm trying to get it, and of course, with my videos now, I'm trying to throw a little bit of farm footage in there just because that is my life. And
sure.
People seem to like the agricultural component of it. I mean, who doesn't like cows, right?
Right, moo.
Moo.
All right, so what are some of the modifications you've started with on the airframe?
The airframe wise, I mean, of course, one of the first things you build in the Zenith is going to be the rear fuselage. So, let me grab a couple of pieces real quick. One of the first things I really started doing was the scalloping. I have a hand arbor press with essentially a punch die set, and I just got it set up. You can look at my videos and I'll explain some of that, but it's essentially just put it in the arbor press and punch all of those scallops out. And then I'll take it in the belt sander back here and sand it smooth, and that's what I wind up with. So pretty much every angle in the rear fuselage is done this way, and all the wing stuff's done this way too. So everything's scalloped, and the whole Super Duty Extreme is extreme because I've gone extreme in trying to lighten stuff that's already light. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how much I'm really saving, but that's where we are.
Okay.
Anyway, rear fuselage, that's where you start on the actual fuselage part. I guess biggest modification right on the start was deleting the access hole underneath. My access hole for the entire rear fuselage is right here in this, essentially the back of the jump seat. And it eliminated that entire hole. So my only access to the rear fuselage is through this hole, and it became a whole new meaning to the term hellhole because it's a booger to get.
Now you got to crawl in the back and then crawl back there.
You do, and it's a point where you have to support your weight back there too, so you can't just sit in there. So when you have to get in there, you have to put down pieces of plywood across the angled runners and that kind of stuff so it can support you.
Well, that's what we have kids for.
That's very true, and that's very handy.
I think she assisted on the last one in that area too, didn't she?
She did. There are places in these planes where adults our size just don't need to be there. And if you have a 6, 7, 10-year-old, something like that, they fit very nicely.
Sure.
So we get into this whole child labor thing.
So what else you got in there?
As far as modifications on the rear fuselage, that is mostly it. I've kept everything reasonable. I mean, you can look in and see, we'll get into controls here in a minute, but you can see this control, if you recognize it, it's a little bit different than the standard. The standard Super Duty has an electric actuated flapper-on control mixer. I have removed all that bracketry and welded in my own, and this actually goes up through the tunnel to a manual flap control like my Super701 has. Now I did that because I like the feel of the 701. I've got over 700 hours in it, and I've got used to the feel of it, the stick right, the flapper on left, and then throttle right there, just really close together. So
and it's instant. You can dump it or add it.
It's instant. You can do it. I mean, you're just right there at it. You have to move your hand that far to get from one to the other.
Sure.
And I loved it in the 701, and it's been great. So I'm trying my best to make this have basically the exact same feel. So even as far as like the throttle bracket, I've got it welded in there, and I tried to sit in the Super701 and get the throttle bracket to where it's in the exact same location that I'm used to.
Dynon Avionics at Dynon.com, offering everything from state-of-the-art glass cockpit options to advanced control modules that power and control your entire aircraft. Gratia Aero Group at GratiaAero.com, proudly representing these best-in-class brands for experimental general aviation. Sherwings, BD Aviation, and MW Fly. KFA, Kitplanes for Africa, engineered for adventure and built for the bush is their motto, offering several STOL-kit aircraft options like the Expedition, Safari, Bush Baby, and Explorer. Find them online at kitplanesforafrica.co.za. BravoFox at bravo-fox.com. The US Distributor for Blackshape Aircraft, providing sales, maintenance, spare parts, and repair services, located at the Sheridan Airport in Indiana. Visit us online at experimentalaircraftchannel.com for all things DIY aviation. And consider supporting us on our Patreon page to help us bring you more original aviation content. All right, John, so moving forward, yeah, obviously there's a lot of modification in the front here. We'll talk about this, your own version of an unpanel.
My own, yeah, sort of an unpanel. I've took some of their components, but I wanted this thing to be simple. And a lot of people looked at my Super 701 and they'd be like, man, I like that, it's clean, there's not much to it. And this is extreme. This is going to a whole new level as far as what I'm concerned. This will be switchless, so everything in here will be either controlled through a few switches on the stick, or it'll be whatever's on the screen, and that'll control everything from lights to fuel pumps to everything. So it's trying to clean it up. Of course, I've eliminated the outside edge of that panel. It's just one single Garmin G3X is all I'm going to have. I know people will scream redundancy and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not instrument rated, and with the Super 701, I've never needed instrument type stuff. You know, a time or two where I've maybe inadvertently flown into a cloud, I've used it and just kind of watched it until I got on through it. But I've never really needed it, and I guess what are the chances you're going to fly into a cloud and when you should be watching for it,
right? And
this go out all at the same time. So I'm taking my chances with that, but I'm sticking with one single panel. Of course, the Super Duty, all the 750 series has a tunnel, so I've incorporated some vents and stuff there, and I've got to do the ducting for it, and I'll have my heater control. But other than that, it'll just be pretty much a bare panel all the way around. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to do this to open up visibility. I mean, that should be phenomenal even compared to the 701. And I know you've been in the Zenith before too. The Zenith's the whole thing, their claim to fame is the visibility from their airplanes, because they use the bubble doors and they've got incredible visibility. I mean, it's almost helicopter-like style visibility. Like you said, we'll get to the engine. I'm using the UL Power 220 plus horsepower turbo engine, and of course that creates a lot of twists. So in order to get all of this tied in with the engine mount and everything, and try to keep this entire cabin secure to where it doesn't twist and it can just maintain its shape when it's under that kind of pressure and beating and banging like I know I'm going to do. I've welded in this frame, and it actually goes up to the firewall and it joins the engine mount also, but then it comes back underneath the lower side of this across and back into that other cross tube. So it added 5 pieces there that aren't on a normal Super Duty. What it did do though, and part of the reason I did this, on the standard Super Duty, they have the full instrument panel that comes all the way across. And when you do that, they have a chromoly piece that attaches to the cabin frame here. It comes up, goes all the way across, and attaches to the other side. So when you go with the unpanel, you cut that part out. So that's essentially how I started this. I cut that part out. So there's a little more to that story, just because it did have the original framework in it. So looking down into the cockpit here, you've got a beautiful pedal assembly here that's quite custom. Actually, most of it is your design here. So let's talk about that for a second. It is. Of course, I'm doing things different on this. There's a lot of things that's just different than I've seen, and we're going to hope that they work. I'm going to try my best to make it work, but a lot of it's prototype and really not going to know until we actually get it fitted up and get controls hooked to it and make sure everything's actually going to work. I've sat there on pieces of paper and stuff I was, just scraps I was throwing away, whittling down a pencil, trying to figure stuff and make sure I got angles and everything's going to work geometry wise. And I do all that the old school way. It's all pretty much done by pencil and piece of paper. I draw it out and draw it sort of to scale and make sure angles and everything work. So you're going with the Behringer wheels and brakes, and I see apparently they make pedals. I don't know if they make the entire pedal. They may actually, I'm not sure, but they do make what's called a Rudder. It's Rudder. Okay. That is essentially the rudder pedal, or the brake pedal that you would mount to the rudder pedals. Got it. So instead of having like the Zenith pedal, the actual toe brake is just the top part. So it essentially mounts on there, and there's a hinge that mounts it to. Let me just pull it off. There's a hinge that mounts it there, and then it works the master cylinder that way. So it's just the top side. Anyway, the Rudder pedals, they're a little different. I think they're going to work really well, but they give you a little more foot control there, and they open up some options for what you can do. You can probably see on that one, it has two actual holes where you can mount the master cylinder for different possible pressures or sensitivity, throw, all that kind of stuff. So
now, in saving weight, what did you redesign these pedals with?
Yeah, I got into titanium.
You just fell into it, huh?
My first round, I really kind of did, and it was accidental in a way, but it was definitely self-induced. So my first, let me just grab one real quick. So my first real dive into titanium, and it's nothing other than I just wanted to see if I could do it, because I was waiting on some parts and components, and I was kind of sitting here in between farming seasons, and I shouldn't say twiddling my thumbs, but there was a little bit of an off season, so I've always wanted to try titanium. I've welded chromoly, I've welded stainless, I've done, you know, aluminum, all those types of things, and I've never messed with titanium. So steering rods, you know, why not? I wanted to try it, and it doesn't cost that much to get into titanium for steering rods. It's just two simple pieces. It's a rod and a piece of plate that's cut, shaped, hole drilled in it and welded together, and then threaded on the opposite end. So that's really all there is to it.
So that's where you started. You decided to continue on with more.
That's where I started.
And more.
I did. So this was even simple for the welding, because with this part I just needed a good sized cup for my TIG, and it didn't really have to have any kind of purge or anything like that to do it. Basically what's happening here, I've eliminated the right side pedals. I really don't need them, never need them in the 701, and I don't expect, I mean, I'm going to be the pilot. I don't expect to do any training or anything like that. Even the throttle cable, it'll be the same setup as the 701. It'll just have a throttle on the left and nothing on the right. So I'm coming up with a new suspension system with this thing, and we'll get to that here in a second. But anyway, long story short on that, I needed to get the steering rods where they're underneath the floorboard instead of on top. So I have the same basic pedal structure, except now I'll have slots in the floorboard for the left and right pedals. It actually has a tube sticking down through the floorboard that the steering rods will be underneath, and it'll hook to the strut underneath the firewall instead of through it. Yes, so this is the prototype we've got in the works for these Zenith airplanes, and I think this is going to be my personal opinion is this is going to be a game changer, because this has been one of my grumbles with the Zenith airplane since the get-go, and I hate to say it that way, but I've said over and over that front strut on the Zenith it's a pogo stick. There's no rebound, compression, damping at all. It's just there's some kind of a spring, whether it be a bungee, the rubber donuts. You've got several aftermarket things that are steel springs, and they several things you can do. But I haven't seen a single one yet that has a good full rebound damping setup, and I think that would help a lot, especially on this rougher terrain and rougher landings and competition, that type of stuff. So what I've kind of been working with TK1, we'll have a full gas shock, be adjustable with a valve for the nitrogen pressure, have rebound damping, and we're also looking at replacing the plastic bearing in the lower part of it to an aluminum bearing. And this aluminum bearing will have 2 O-ring grooves in it. The actual strut will have O-rings on it, 2 of them. We will put a grease zerk in between, so this will actually be a greasable unit. So it should eliminate some of the potential for stress or binding or any of that kind of stuff. Well, I'm doing mine different. We've gone through this much trouble, and mine will be different too. So along with the pedals and the steering rods that will come out underneath, I'll be just essentially covering these little slots that are for the steering rods going through the firewall. What we're essentially going to do, I'm going to eliminate this lower bearing on mine completely. We're going to mount the shock body solid at the bottom and the top, and we're going to move the steering rod links below the fuselage instead of where they are for these slots. So everything that is actually moving will be below the fuselage instead of have a bearing here and one here and some kind of suspension up above. It'll all be solid mount. And that'll allow me to actually strengthen this whole area because the shock body will be tying it all together too. But I'll be able to cut back some of this stuff. I won't need hardly as much because the way it's designed, the top part essentially has to carry all the load. The bottom bearing doesn't carry any vertical load on these things, so it'll change the dynamics of it a little bit, and there's been a lot of figuring going on into that, but it's promising and I'm excited about it.
All right, so moving right along, John, from the firewall to the engine, the power plant, you're still sticking with UL power, obviously, and but now we've got an extra cylinder or two.
Yes. I love my UL power. I mean, the 701 has been an absolute blast, and it's been, I mean, I've had so many people, and I've even got them on videos and stuff. I've got so many people that have got in my 701, and their comment are, this is the smoothest running plane I've ever been in, and I've heard that over and over and over again. And I've been in a plane that's had both the 4-cylinder UL versus the 6-cylinder. And I'm here to tell you, I always thought my 4-cylinder was pretty crazy smooth until I got into a 4-cylinder. I'm like, holy cow! You talk about a smooth balanced engine. It's right here. Anyway, yeah, UL Power. It's been really great for me. They've been great to talk to and hang out with at shows. And anytime I needed anything, they would be right there on the phone or email or whatever, and questions or whatever, they would get me taken care of.
Now, with this one being now a 6-cylinder and turbocharged, what kind of power output does it have sustained and then for takeoff, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at all the charts. I know this thing is rated at 220 horsepower at 2,800 RPM.
It's a little lower than the other ones.
It is lower. All the non-turboed ones they have their peak essentially at 3,300, where this one's redlined at 2,800. They keep it low, I guess, for the turbo. They don't want it to build too much. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know all the technicalities, but anyway, this one's 2,800 versus 3,300.
Okay.
They added the turbo to it. The turbo UL is not. They say it's not boosted that much, but it's altitude compensated.
It's normalized.
Normalized, yes. So
but you'll probably toy with that a little bit eventually.
You know, I don't know. They have their proprietary ECU, engine control unit. So I'm probably really not going to mess with that until I sort of work with them and we maybe tweak something. But I think it's going to do what I want it to, the way it is from the factory. I mean, this thing, looking at it compared to the non-turboed versions, the torque curve on this engine is phenomenal. I mean, it's flat, just as flat as it can be from 2,000 all the way to redline, which is where we're running these airplanes.
All right, so moving to the back of the machine, there's been a whole bunch of customization here, obviously because this hasn't been done before, at least this configuration, the way you've got it, so you had to make your own engine mount. So what did you have to do to get this done?
Yeah, so that's entirely custom too, the engine mount for this. So UL Power has an engine mount that they can sell you an engine mount off the shelf now that will connect the 750 Super Duty to the 520 series, whether it's turboed, non-turboed. But with the whole scheme of how I wanted to make this more STOL capable, I really wanted to move this engine back a little bit. So just to get my CG a little further back, and I didn't have to put so much ballast in the back. Anyway, long story short on that, I've made this custom mount, and it's 6 inches shorter than the one you can buy off the shelf. It moves the whole engine back 6 inches comparatively. And that makes it a really short couple, but it makes things really tight and cumbersome and awkward to try to figure out how to make everything fit too. We talked about the tubing on the cabin frame a little bit ago. This tube comes up. It actually goes all the way to the firewall and joins it underneath this shelf. It all ties all this together. The connection for that actually comes directly into this. So I call this a 7-point, where most of them are a 5-point connection for a firewall. I've added 2 more for a 7-point, and these 6th and 7th points directly attach to the front side of where the cabin frame tube comes. So it kind of triangulates and gets everything boxed in, I think, a little better. It should make it a little stronger all the way around as far as a twist and that kind of stuff.
Sure. With turbos, you also have to be intercooled to keep the turbo cool.
Yes, and that you don't always have to, but it's just a best case scenario. You want it to be cool. It makes everything better. It makes the life of the engine better. It makes more power. Essentially what you're doing there, you're sending cooling air down through these fins, and then air from the turbo gets pushed through the other way and comes out this side and comes up around into the inlet for the intake. But it's cooling the air that goes into the engine.
Okay.
And the reason, well, this is another custom mod. I bought the core, but I had to build the end caps and all in. And I had to build this from scratch too, just because I could not find one that I could mount anywhere to work and make fit and not be intrusive to view and that kind of stuff. I mean, my original intention was to just buy an aftermarket one, put on top, and have air through just essentially a ram tunnel type thing on top, blow down through it. And then I got to looking, and I'm sitting in my seat, and I'm like, well, man, that's up there and it's going to block my view. I don't want a tunnel, look like a hot rod, but it's going to block my view.
Sure.
So here we are with another total custom one-off. And basically what this does, it'll mount to the firewall, and the little mounts here will mount it to the engine mount. So it's a very tight fit. I mean, you can see it comes around the strut. I actually have if you'll hand me that, I'll show the pipe there that's welded together. Yep. It all becomes a crazy tight fit. There's a elbow that comes out there, a silicone elbow. This will come across and it'll go pretty well directly into the intake for the engine. So there's just a lot going on there. And of course, when you have all this in the way, you still have to get air from outside down through the fin. So I've got mock-ups with foam. I'll have to build a carbon fiber shroud to pull air from the top of the cowl down through the fins to cool that part of it. So it gets very tight and complicated quick.
Come up here a little bit.
I'm scared you're going to whoop me into shape here trying to get this thing done.
All right, so there you have it. John is still here right where we left him. He's been busy with life and still working on airplanes. And we were just talking that we're both kind of in the same scenario right now with getting these airplanes done. Almost nearly the same stage, except your wing's a little bit further along.
Yeah, we're not that far apart.
Yeah, so I want to put this challenge out between us, a little gentleman's challenge, that we get these done before the end of the year.
This guy just about killed me with his December build every day videos, because I did that and I'm feeding cattle every day, and I'm out there till who knows what time, and I'm coming in here at sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning and staying up till who knows how late, seeing the sun come up, trying to get videos out for you guys. But yeah.
The 31-day challenge.
Yes, the 31-day challenge.
Well, we've got a few more days left in this challenge than that, right? We have until...
We have quite a few days.
Until we have after Christmas. Let's get these things done.
We're going to have to challenge each other and do that. Build something every day, right?
I don't want you to beat me, but I just know my track record. You probably will. But let's get it done this year. That's the plan. This thing was supposed to be in there like 2 years ago, so man, I want it in there so bad. In the meantime, if you want to follow John, he's got his own channel and he posts on social. And where can they find you to check in on you?
Look, you can look at essentially the way it's been forever is the Super701 is probably the easiest way to find it. I've also, the hashtag, essentially the @FlyingFarmer, that's what I'm trying to get everybody over to, so I can get my Super Duty and my 701 and my little 701 all in one channel and some farming stuff too. So Tennessee TN Flying Farmer or Super701 and you'll find me.
All right, check it out. Quick shout out to our patrons over on Patreon and our co-pilot status, Zach Newsom, Mike Babcock, Lynn Gardner, Gary Martin, Michael Smith. Thanks for watching this episode of the Experimental Aircraft Channel. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss a single episode. See you in the next one.